Simon, I'd like to start with you. As I said, the details of this case that occurred in Colorado are disturbing, but they point to a larger trend as well, don't they, where the FBI had just not too long ago in front of the Senate discussed the fact that domestic terrorism in the U.S. is the now prevailing threat, even over international terrorism.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And that is the case. It's growing in the United Kingdom. It's growing across the European Union. There was a report recently commissioned by the International Centre for Counterterrorism in The Hague, where they used Germany for a case study. And it's a growing trend. And unfortunately, it is being, it's not entirely being ignored, but the problems go below the issue, if you get my meaning. It starts with hate speech, and we've seen this in the UK where we have outlawed essentially any type of hate speech, especially that promotes violence. In the US, they haven't, and that's the fundamental problem. That's where it starts.
Okay, so Steve, one of the things that I'm glad, obviously, Simon brought up the European connection, because in fact, Ray, the FBI had actually brought that up as well, saying there is solidarity across the oceans between, if we were to term neo-Nazi groups, or however we choose to term these groups and individuals, that solidarity too is worrying, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think these boundaries have little relevance in the 21st century, the idea of domestic versus foreign terrorism. I mean, as a historian of terrorism, I don't think they ever really had much relevancy. And I think that sort of all terrorism has both a foreign and a domestic element. And that the sort of artificiality is part of the problem in the U.S., this idea that if it's domestic, in a sense, it's not real terrorism. We're not going to call it terrorism. I mean, I was looking at some of the media coverage around the arrest of Holzer, and it was described not as, preventing terrorism, it was described as preventing a hate crime. And so there is that kind of distinguishing. But as your other guest mentioned, I mean, there are links. And, you can see this trend going on, with the New Zealand attack and elsewhere, these sort of links on the far right, on white supremacy terrorism, links between various entities in different countries. But I think we need to get away from this sort of foreign versus domestic and just see it as first and foremost as terrorism.
That's a very good point, Simon, because, I mean, I wonder at some level if we get too bogged down sometimes in this terminology as such. Obviously, it's good that now even the far right, these sorts of threats are being labeled terrorism, certainly. But do you think that the semantics of this is not as important as many of us possibly make it out to be?
I think semantics is extraordinarily important, because you need to label it in order to, I mean, the whole point in labeling an incident as terrorist is for the public. It's to public outcry, it's condemnation, and it needs to be labeled correctly. Double standards should not exist, and unfortunately they do. And again, it's something that the International Centre for Counterterrorism picked up earlier this year in the report, was that there is a double standards between jihadist Islamist threat versus national threat. The FBI in the US is a little different in that the legal definition of terrorism is different for both. And that's one of the issues, I think. And don't forget, the United States don't have a definition of terrorism across the board. It's the agencies that have their own little definitions, if you like. The FBI have one, Homeland Security have a different one. And what they really do need to get a grip with this. We also need to, my advice to the US would be to almost mimic kind of what the United Kingdom have done, what Canada have done within the Commonwealth, is that take a risk management style approach to terrorism in terms of trying to stop the hate speech first, trying to stop the promotion of violence, full stop, or the promotion of hate.